Welcome back to Passionate About Music Education, a channel dedicated to music educators like you. I'm Rachel Hardman, and today we're going to talk about teaching our students to practice. The other day I was talking with one of my music teacher clients, and they were expressing their concern about how to help students practice. And in fact, the difficulty that they have when they inherit new students is that they haven't been taught how to practice or know how to practice. But when we really dug deep into this conversation, we kind of unpicked the fact that perhaps we didn't get taught that as students as well. That there is this presumption that whenever we get a new student, that they really already know all these skills. It's very much like we presume our students know lots about technology because they're constantly on social media and constantly using their laptops and iPads, and they're probably more tech savvy than we are. But actually knowing how to put together a PowerPoint or a Word document or save a file are the areas that most of our students don't really know how to do. So we do have to be careful as teachers not to presume that our students know everything. We have to make sure that we dive deep into their knowledge to help them. And I'm sure you probably can relate, because I'm sure that you've got students who you think are more advanced at performing and really have grasped that understanding of practice, and actually when you start to unpick it and talk about their practice routine, they haven't yet really grasped that concept. So how can we help our students become better at practicing? Well, here's 3 tips for you that you can implement this week with your students. So here's my first tip, and it is really about relating the technical aspects of music making to the pieces that they're studying. When I was learning, I'm sure you can relate to this, I worked through the external music exams, the ABRSM music performance exams, and you got this big list of scales that you had to learn, the arpeggios, and then all the sight reading and all the oral. But I never really understood why I had to learn the scales other than I had to learn the scales. The teacher never really explained in a way that was comprehensive to me as a student how the scales and arpeggios really related to the music I was playing. I didn't see the correlation, he didn't explain the correlation to me. And once you start teaching your students the key that they're playing in, the fact that the scale that they're learning is in that key, that there's scalic patterns, there's arpeggio patterns, and getting the students to identify those aspects within the music, they then understand and can relate to why scales and arpeggios are important. Also, developing that technical dexterity in your performance, so you have that nice clean playing. But if you're relating it back to the piece of music or the works that they're doing, it makes so much more sense because there is a purpose to it. Otherwise, scales are just scales for scale's sake, and I know they're really important, and you know they're really important. But if we can find ways of encouraging our students to see the link, particularly our younger students, it will become more meaningful to them to practice them. The second tip is teaching students how to practice a piece. You must know that whenever a student starts a piece of music, they start from the beginning, they get 10 bars into it, make a mistake, and then they go and replay it. They always start from the beginning. My second tip is to encourage students to focus on looking at the whole piece of music that they're learning and really breaking down into sections what they're going to practice. So you and I know that when a student starts playing a piece of music, and we've all done it ourselves. You start at the beginning, you play through, and then you make a mistake, so you go back and you start at the beginning and you play through, and really the only part that ever gets good is the beginning. So really encourage your students to think about practicing in sections, whether it's a line of music or a couple of lines of music, or the beginning or the middle or the end, however you're doing it, so that they are completely competent all the way through the whole piece of music. And my tip 3 for today is to ensure the student really understands the structure of the music. If students understand the repetition that happens throughout pieces and how music is structured, it makes learning a piece much easier. Most pieces, particularly from the classical repertoire, that students learn, particularly if they're doing exam boards, are generally in ternary form. And so you'll have your section A, then your B, and then you go back to A. So generally the 2 A's are the bits that they play more frequently than the B's, so of course they've got to practice that middle section more. But once you actually explain that to students and get them to talk about how the music is structured, where phrases are coming back, whether you get a complete melodic phrase that's repeated, or whether it's gone up the fifth, whatever you're doing with your pieces of music, the repertoire that students studying with you, it's really important that they understand how the piece works so that they can practice it more efficiently. Even this applies to general music classrooms. So for instance, if you take the tune Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which is a great song for beginner keyboard lessons if you're doing general music. The first line of the music and the third line of the music are exactly the same. The second line, you have two phrases that are repeated. So this piece of music that's 12 bars long, for them to actually learn is only 6 bars and it's repeated. And once students start to see that and understand it because you've explained it to them, and then they actually become less intimidated about learning it because they're looking for patterns already. You can do this with your absolute beginners. This is not just for our advanced players. And the last point on this one is really, not only are you asking them to look at the structure of the music, you're also looking at the structure as well in terms of musicality. What kind of mood is the beginning in the section A? What kind of mood does it change to in section B? Do the dynamics change? Does the phrasing change? Does the articulation change? You can help your students unpick this. They will understand the music better. They will know what they're focusing on, and they will improve their practice because they're more likely to practice because they're understanding how to break their music up into sections to be effective. And my last bonus tip is really get your students to be listening to these pieces. On the whole, you will find that most pieces have been recorded and uploaded onto YouTube. So your student can hear other examples. Really encourage them to listen to performances that they think are good, that they want to aspire to sound like, but also to evaluate other performances and go, is this what I really want to sound like? So I hope this video on helping our students practice has been helpful to you. I think for all of us, there's still such a presumption that everybody knows things already because there's so much information out there. Actually, that's not the case. And our job as amazing teachers is to really keep on picking that information for our students to understand and enjoy music making. Look forward to seeing you here again. I'm Rachel Hardman, and this is Passionate About Music Education.